I hope not. I would think that there would be a pretty strong look at what's happening when that, if and when that does start. I would certainly hope there's a lot of integrity amongst the players that, you know, their salary's enough.
Ask Jeremy about this too. Do you think this will change how teams report injuries?
That's a good question. I would assume that they'd probably want a little bit more info. You see it in football, I think, more so. You know, you see the sports betting there. So that would be a guess. I haven't heard anything for certain.
The similar question to what I just asked, but can you see the league changing the way that it handles concussions? And do you feel like the game needs to change the way that it addresses the, you know, kind of the way that the NFL has embraced the effects?
Well, I think we're doing a really good job of identifying if a player is maybe got dinged up, and we have spotters that aren't, you know, associated with either team that will pull a guy, and then they go through the protocol once they're pulled, and you know the player is really the only one that can tell you how they're feeling, and I think, you know, they're getting better educated on the symptoms and, you know, what to maybe expect, and you know, you can only go on what they're telling you, right? I mean, it's such a brain is such a different body part where you can't really say how long you're going to be out, and everybody reacts to it differently. So, you know, I think what the league is done is you know, educate as best they can the players, and then the players have to be honest and forthright about how they feel, and where they're at coming back from an injury like that.
I guess to follow up as a former player, I mean, can you just speak on how much it's changed since what it was, you know, like even a handful of years ago?
Well, it's changed dramatically. I mean, the education piece is changed a great deal. You know, now there's a video every training camp the players have to watch about you know, what happens if you think you have a concussion. So, you know, you watch that video and it's certainly eye-opening. That wasn't around when I was playing. The knowledge about brain injuries certainly weren't around when I was playing.
Pick up on Steve's question about left side D. There's an issue there. There was also an issue with second line scoring. You didn't even have support scoring. So when you get out the magnifying glass here to make the fix, where's your priority? Is it the D spot, or is it that second line scoring?
Well, I think right now, you know, we got to figure out what we're doing on the backup goaltender. That's an important piece. I mean, if we're going to have that goalie expect to play 25 games, you're going to want a goalie that's going to give you some really good starts. And then I would say, you know, you could pick them between the forward group. I think offensively we've got enough skill and talent. It just dried up for us for whatever reason in the playoffs. We weren't getting anything 5-on-5, and not much, as you pointed out, from the secondary piece of it. On the back end, you know, I think you know, you see what happens. You watch enough playoff hockey, you see what happens in the playoffs. Everything just gets ramped up, the physicality, even though you know, it's not quite where it used to be, but it does get ramped up in the playoffs. And you know, I think you know, in an ideal world, if you can find a guy that can skate and retrieve pucks into the big body and on the back end, that's what you'd love to have.
You go back on the goaltending. Were you satisfied with Udobin?
I thought he had a great year for us. Yeah. He really stepped in when Tuukka was struggling a little bit and gave us opportunities to win hockey games. And you know, I don't think if we didn't have that, I don't know if we certainly wouldn't have had the year that we had.
Would you want to have him back? I mean, considering
where were you?
I'm here now. Would you want to have him back, just considering that he's proven he can do it and he's kind of a known commodity there versus the unknowns out there?
Yeah, he's well liked in the locker room, and you know, he had starting last year those two big games for us in Chicago and against the Islanders, and then he followed it up with a good start this year. You know, obviously it has to make sense for us, and you know, when someone gets have a really good year going into the UFA, sometimes they want to see what's really out there, and you can't blame them for that.
The back end, you've invested a lot in the draft and left shot D. Can you wait for those guys to develop, or do you feel like you have to strike now and the window is now?
Well, I think if there's something that makes sense for us now, we would probably look at that. you know, coming off the year that we had, we know the expectations are higher for next year, and you know, it's not an easy league. We saw the teams that make the playoffs, how many points they got this year. So if we can improve our club now, we'd like to do that. We know there's guys coming. Maybe not quite by September, but maybe some point during the year, depending on how they develop, and see where that goes. But if there's something that makes sense for us this offseason, we'd definitely look at that.
You asked Donnie this last week. Do you want a first rounder back?
Well, it's always nice to have a pick in the first round if you, you know. But if nothing makes sense for us, then we're not going to get one just to get one. You know, our scouts do a lot of work during the season. They travel a lot of miles in crappy weather, and they get a little bummed out. But they understand, you know, if you're making a deal and you have to go first round to try and win a cup, they get that.
Fair or unfair to call Rick Nash a disappointment, given what you gave up for him, and kind of, you know, given that he seemed like he was going to be the right fit for you guys when you got him?
Yeah, it's unfair, just only because of the injury that he got at the end of the year, and it was very difficult for him to, you know, get back into you know, the game speed and the game shape. You know, the head injuries are a different injury where you have to really monitor how much exercise you can do, and sometimes you got to pull back if you start to get some symptoms again. So, and he wasn't the same player when he came back, which is unfortunate because we all thought it was going to be a good fit on that second line with Krejci, and there was times when it showed that it was going to be a good fit, but unfortunately, I think him and Riley Nash, both those players, didn't quite come back the way we would like to or hope they would from their injuries.
Kim, you and Mr. Jacobs and Charlie, I mean, for several years there you had these year-end things where, you know, it sounded like you guys felt like maybe you were in neutral. You know, based on these last couple of years, and I mean, do you feel like you guys are set now or on the right path for, you know, a number of years to come, and in time to use, you know, your key core guys, you know, your Patrice,
Well, I feel that way. I mean, you know, when we made the move and then we hired Don, it was important for me to see how we could take advantage of the guys that had won that were still playing for us here, and build around those players. And you know, I knew it was going to be take a lot of work, and you have to be right on the younger players. And you know, I think the scouts did a good job. I think they developed well, and Don did a good job with you know, the communication piece. I think is important from, you know, the coach to and the GM, and then from myself and Don of what we're trying to accomplish here. And I think, you know, there's a lot of excitement that's coming off this year. There's, like I said, a little disappointment from the way it ended, but I think our future is bright. But we just, you know, we can't feel like the year that we had we can just coast. I mean, it's going to be a challenge, and we want to get better.
You didn't get to feel this way before the 2011 season, because obviously 2010 ended the way it did.
Right,
so,
right.
I mean, I kind of asked Mr. Jacobs this, but do you kind of feel like this is the most positive off-season type feeling to have? You know,
yeah, you know, it's a
building
good
off?
question. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, we got to the finals in 13 again and lost, and that's disappointing. You get that far and lose, seeing how close you were again. And then after that, we struggled, and you know, this I think shows a lot of promise, and we should be excited about it, but we also recognize that we have to get better.
In your 12 games, you had some bad officiating.
Thank you.
Keen observation. And so that said, I mean, you know, I'm hearing it from other places around the league too. Are you hearing it? Do you have a feeling that there's sort of a critical mass here for the league to address it? General managers go in and talk about it?
Well, I think it does need to be addressed because, you know, the game's gotten faster, and there was a lot of great, exciting matchups in the playoffs, and you know, a lot of the talk was not just our series but other series about the officiating. The thing that disappoints me the most for us is, you know, not taking anything away from Tampa, but I felt like we should be going back for Game 5 tied 2-2. And that's a whole different mindset than going down there 3-1. You can say all you want about, oh, let's just focus on one game, but you really look at, as a player, you look at the big picture and you say, man, we have to win 3 in a row against this team. It's a lot different mindset. How they don't make that call, we're up 3-2 with 7 minutes to go. Now we should be going on the power play. Whether we score or not, it might chew up 2 minutes of the game, and we have a different mindset going down to Tampa. It's the non-calls that really frustrated me the most. I mean, I'm not complaining about what calls we had against us. For me, there was 3 in particular that really bothered me. The non-call on the Marchand slash in Game 2. Kevin Miller got a boarding call, and later that game, same situation where Pasta got hit from behind and there was no call late in the game. And then, of course, the no call on McAvoy. So those 3, for me, were tough to take.
So is there a remedy here? I mean, is it the refs aren't experienced enough? They're not good enough? Is it
Well, you know what? It's something that the league has to look at. They have to go back and look at all the games and see how they. I know they do that after every game, but I think they really need to take a hard look at what's happening with the refereeing, and because the game's gotten that much faster, are the referees keeping up with the pace of the game? I mean, it's fast out there, and I think it's just something the league needs to really take a look at, because with all the great playoff series and what was a common theme amongst reporters across the league were either the refereeing and then Marchand's licking. So it took away from the great game that we have.
Would you want to open up the Pandora's box wider of replays to a lot of this different stuff, potential challenges for things? I mean, is that a way to use technology and what we have today to kind of keep up with the speed of the game?
Well, it is, as long as they can say, hey, like for example, I'll give you an example of Pasta getting a 4-minute penalty. It would take 2 seconds for someone to call down and say, hey, listen, it was his own stick that did it. It's a non-call. Something like that is easy. The puck off the glass in the Toronto series, which was called straight out, I mean, that's an easy call. I think if you get too deep into the weeds, you could find yourself getting a little aggravated with how long the debate is going to be. Is it a call or non-call? But I think there's some really easy ones. Whether they want to go that route, I'm not sure, but I think there's some really easy ones where you can call down quickly and say, hey, listen, that wasn't a penalty. Pasta gets 4 minutes for something he didn't really do. And then it happened again in Washington versus the same player. So, there's a lot of technology that can help you, but again, you don't want to bog down and get into the weeds and slow the game down too much.
Are you a fan of the format as it is now, playoff-wise, where you end up playing 2 versus 1 in the conference there in the second round?
I did, I don't mind the idea of playing divisional hockey in the playoffs because of the rivalries that it creates, and especially for the following season. This year, obviously, knowing you have to try to probably get through Toronto and Tampa to get into the conference finals was something we looked at and said, geez, it would have been nice if it was 1 versus 8 and 2 versus 7. I mean, our 3 teams had really strong years, and they were good teams. So it's one of those things where, is it an anomaly this year? I know Nashville's probably feeling the same way we do right now. So you'd like to believe that your regular season maybe at times gives you a little bit of a benefit in the playoffs, but having said that, they're all really good teams. I mean, it's so competitive now. You never really know, if you do get an 8 seed, is it really a benefit?
Cam, getting back to what Mike was talking about, just the foundation you had and how you built around it, the veteran core there. There's going to come a time, obviously, where you got to start thinking about life without them, and you look at maybe, or even Tuukka too, the center position or the goalie position. What do you see as the most important, maybe over the next 5 to 7 years?
Well, I think right now we've had historically we've had problems in the goaltending position. That we're really finding someone that's going to replace Tuukka or push Tuukka. So that's been an area that we've talked about for a couple of years now. We've got some guys that hopefully are going to develop, but they're not here anytime soon. But they're good prospects for us. The center position's a big position. I mean, you look at what Patrice has done throughout his career. David, Krejci for the most part of his career. Those are 2 good players that have played here that have helped us win a cup and be successful. So that's from the goaltender on out through the middle of the ice is very important.
Thanks.